evening, everybody, and welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, Tuesday, April 8th. I'll call the meeting to order and start with roll call on my left.
Bart Hostel.
June Gagny.
Carla Gestardens.
Dan Kitchkevich.
Brian Bray.
Sean Staub.
Jerry Pollard.
We do have a quorum, and I will appoint Dan Kaskevich for Frank Mills this evening. And we're starting with public hearings. Item A, 25-4SP of Kevin Flood, Fussin O'Neill, applying for a special permit to upgrade the sewage treatment plant located at 26 Black Hill Road to add 2 clarifying tanks and associated equipment. Assessors map 14, block 78, lot 14, RA 19 zoning district. Do we have speaking for the applicant?
Yes, they didn't show up, so I will run through it very quickly.
Okay.
So we did go through this last month. We made a presentation. We were simply waiting on wetlands approval, which I issued an agent approval for the wetlands.
Can you speak up, please?
The applicant ran through.
No, there's nothing there.
So the applicant ran through the application last month. This is the town's sewage treatment plant. We are adding 2 new clarifying tanks to upgrade the capacity, increase the capacity. They will be located where there is a current solar field. That solar field is being relocated. In your packets, you have a little schematic of where the tanks are going to be going. They are a good distance from the property lines, about 135 feet or so. And that pretty much sums it up. I don't know if you have any other questions.
So there were no changes from what was presented last month, and the only outstanding item was the wetlands approval?
That is correct.
Okay. So this is a public hearing. So if anyone from the public has a comment or question on this application, this is your opportunity to step up to the microphone and ask your comment or question about this application. Did board members have any additional questions about what was presented last month?
None at this time.
Any additional comments from staff?
Just the standard comments that are in the packet.
Okay. So if there's no other comments or questions on this application, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by June to close public hearing.
Second.
Second by Bart. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is closed. Moving on to item B, 25-2SP, Strategic Commercial Realty, Inc., requesting a special permit for earth excavation and removal on property located at 64 Black Hill Road, Assessors Map 7, Block 78, Lot 19, RA 60 zoning district. And just for clarity, this is still pending for wetlands, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so just to be clear for members, this public hearing cannot be closed this evening because wetlands still has to act on the application. So tonight's presentation and comment will be continued to next month. And for the applicant?
For the record, John Felice from Boundaries LLC, representing Strategic Commercial Realty. Also present this evening is Leon Spinard, the property owner. If there are any direct questions for him. Thank you for the introduction, and yes, you're correct. We have a wetlands continued hearing that is going to move till next week, and hopefully we'll have an action so that this commission can take up an action for the date of next week.
Okay, you speak in
Sure. The property is located north of Black Hill Road. It contains 134 acres. Our proposal is to excavate 11.3 acres of the property, which is a little less than 10% of the total property area. The excavation is going to yield approximately 116,000 cubic yards of earth product, and it is depicted on the 13-sheet set that I have in front of me. I'm just trying to twist this a little bit.
that mic you have to get pretty close to.
Okay.
You might want to hold it.
Yeah, pull it out.
Yeah, I should be able to. In preparation of the application, the property was surveyed in its entirety. Limits within the wetlands were delineated, limits of the flood zones were identified, limits of the state highway are identified, and the existing conditions of the property is shown in their entirety on sheet number 2 of the plan set as the property survey associated with the application. Sheet 3 of the plan set indicates the preparations that we went through in order to develop this plan. Those preparations included the excavation of approximately 30 test holes to identify the areas that were suitable for excavation and also determine the soil characteristics, as well as the installation of 6 groundwater monitoring wells. And that information is tabulated on the bottom of sheet 3 as to the depths and information regarding the wells. And the wells are highlighted on the sheet in front of me in green. They are placed throughout the property and throughout the excavation area in general. The site is broken into 2 phases of excavation. Which is depicted in a key map on sheet 5. You see excavation area A to the south, excavation area B to the north. Excavation area A consists of approximately 5 acres in which we plan to construct a pond. That area will be excavated and material removed would be approximately 25,500 cubic yards, resulting in a pond with a maximum water depth of 7 feet, 3-to-1 slopes on both sides of the pond from the adjacent upland areas. And that is the only portion of the property where excavation is in close proximity to the property boundary line. The property boundary to the southwest, that is along the properties that front on Karen Drive, is maintained at the 100-foot limit, or the 100-foot buffer that's been required under your recent regulation amendment from January. Excavation area B is not adjacent to or close proximity to property lines. The access to the site will be over a new curb cut, which is going to be located approximately 200 feet to the west of the existing driveway to the property. That location was selected to meet the requirements of the Connecticut DOT for sight lines for the traffic in and out of the site during the excavation operations. Excavation area B, which is to the northeast, contains 6.3 acres, and we intend to excavate 90,500 cubic yards over that area. The maximum depth of excavation in area B is 20 feet in the central portion of the site and about 12 feet as you move to the northeast. The maximum depth of excavation in area A is 12 feet, resulting in that 25,000 cubic yard yield. Sheet number 6 identifies the existing and proposed topography for excavation area A. Consider the excavation area shaded in tan on the plan that's in front of you. The areas outside of that will remain undisturbed, and that 100-foot buffer to the property line is required by your regulations is met on the southwest side of the excavation area. The pond will be through the central part of that excavation area, and again have a maximum depth of 7 feet. Each excavation area or phase of the project has a topsoil stockpile area identified. Sheet for excavation area A, it's to the north of the excavation, as is a location for a concrete fueling pad for the excavation equipment during the operation. Excavation area B, again, topsoil stockpile area is identified in the central part of the site. There's also a concrete pad for that phase for the fueling of equipment during operations, and that portion of the property is accessed over the haul road that will be constructed or upgraded from the existing path that's there now, easterly of the principal excavation area. Sheet number 8 includes cross sections for both excavation areas. The section that's shown at the top of the page essentially runs east and west through excavation area A. It shows the depth of the excavation, the anticipated pond water level, and the limits of that excavation completely. And then the lower portion, the larger cross section, is the section that's running north and south through excavation area A, depicting the existing and proposed grades and the maximum cuts and fills. Sheets numbers 9 through 13 include the sightline demonstration drawings for the Connecticut DOT, which are shown on sheets 12 and 13. and the erosion sedimentation control notes and construction details for the operation itself during construction. Erosion sedimentation control measures include sediment fence and/or wood chip berms around the entire excavation area. Areas adjacent to the wetlands and adjacent to the haul road that will be constructed. We've specified sediment fence embedded in the wood chip berm itself, so there's double protection in that area. We also anticipate controlling ambient dust by use of a water truck, which is included on the notes as well. And the hours of operation that we're proposing for the excavation would be 7 to 5 Monday through Friday, 8 to 12 on Saturdays, consistent with your regulations. As I had mentioned, there are fueling pads for both sections, and the detail for that fueling pad is shown on sheet 10. We have specified in the application that the anticipated trips per day would be 100, which would be 50 in and 50 out. The material excavated on site will not be processed on site. It will simply be excavated, loaded, and transported to an adjacent parcel or nearly adjacent parcel that is also the applicant's at 136 Black Hill Road. So traffic leaving the site will be turning to the west and going up to the other site for processing. So processing or washing proposed on the site. All the slopes on the site as graded will not exceed 3 to 1, and we have specified for reclamation 12 inches of subsoil and 6 inches of topsoil. The property is currently houses some agricultural fields that are closer to the river. These excavated areas will result in future use. I would provide the 18 inches of material of soil over the excavated material when it's completely finished. There is no discharge from the site for stormwater up and through the 100-year storm event. We have received comments from town staff, town engineer, which have been addressed to their satisfaction. We've also received some comments from the town planner. There's one outstanding comment that we have not yet addressed. It's the addition of a note regarding clearing and grubbing. That's something that will be added to the plans. You have in your file an approval from the Connecticut DOT for the location of the driveway, meeting their sightline requirements. With no further comments, and we are pending a wetlands application currently. Other than that, if there are questions, I'll be happy to respond.
Question, so you're constructing a pond, so there's
Correct.
not currently a pond on the property?
There are inland wetlands on the property, but not a pond.
Okay, so you mentioned the depth of the pond is 7 feet. What is the length and width of the pond? So
It's a 5-acre pond altogether.
Okay. Which sheet is that detailed on?
It's an excavation area A, which I believe is on sheet 5.
And then excavation, so that's on area A, will be a 5-acre pond. Then on area B, that will be reclaimed and restored to agricultural?
Correct.
I think the concrete fueling pads will be removed upon completion of both sites.
Yes.
And to be more clear on the traffic configuration, so
Yes.
this property is across the street from the Central Village Fire Department.
That's correct.
Where will the new driveway be located?
The new driveway is, the existing driveway is probably maybe less than 100 feet to the west of the driveway into the fire station. The new driveway will be another 200 feet further to the west.
Okay.
So it'll be approximately 250 feet from the west of the entrance to the firehouse.
Okay. So then the traffic from this site is going to make a right turn onto Route 14,
Correct.
and then it will take that immediate right into the Rossin project on the same side of the road.
That's correct.
So this
At
project,
36.
okay, so this project is not going to be going on the other side of the road.
Correct.
Any other questions from board members? Okay. This is a public hearing, so this is your opportunity, if you have a comment or question about the application, understanding there's also a wetlands next week, and this will be continued to next month. So are there any comments or questions from the public? Yep, step right up to the microphone. If you could just state your name, your address, and what your comment is.
Hi, my name is Heather Rutland. I actually bought the property right on the side of Ross's, and we just started building a house. It's a bit shocking to hear this information since I was actually declined by wetlands for about 3 or 4 meetings last year to put an electricity line through my existing driveway because I live in the wetlands region. So we just had to spend $15,000 to get poles for Eversource, put down my my driveway because I can't disrupt any microorganism in the moss or in the water. I have a beautiful crystal clear pond there that we have so much wildlife. We have bald eagles, we have hawks, we have deer, we have, woodpeckers they're like this size. We have amazing, forest animals and wildlife. My pond is full of different wildlife. It is absolutely crystal clear. We literally are in the middle of processing and building our house. And it's taken a couple of years. So it's really shocking to hear that someone can come in, obviously Rossins has already been there, but that they can do anything to disrupt the ecosystem at all. I feel like I should get that $15,000 back and be able to finish building my house, since no one on the board would let us do this. And we've had to pay for surveying, extra surveying, we've had to pay for extra electrician fees, we've had to pay absolutely astronomical for no reason. And I really hope that everyone here takes this into consideration. Also, my son is extremely immunocompromised, and he has autism and he's nonverbal. And I am very concerned as a mother that we move to this new location and this new plant might go behind my new house.
Okay.
I understand that that's next week.
Well, I just want to make really clear to the public that this application is not related to the waste incinerator plant that is going before the Hartford Siting Council. This is not that property. Just for background and fact check, because I know there's a lot of rumors going out there. The waste incinerator plant has been proposed for the area across the street, on the O&G property across the street. This board voted to deny an industrial zone change on that property in November of 2023. This board will have no decision-making authority or power when it comes to that waste incinerator plant. It is going to the Hartford Siting Council. So it is going to the State of Connecticut Siting Council. So if you are here about waste incinerator, we have no authority to make a decision on that. However, at the end of this meeting, I have added to our agenda to write an advisory letter to the Siting Council in order to outline for them that we already denied a zone change for that particular property. So for this public hearing purpose, this is about the property across from the Central Fire Department. Any comments, questions have to be related to that property. In regards to the waste incinerator, there is a public hearing on May 7th. I recommend you all attend. So,
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes.
I still have my same exact wetlands concerns.
Yep.
And, I just built a $40,000 foundation. I would really like to know how the excavating is going to affect, or blasting is going to affect the area and the wildlife.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comment. If you could ask the question, will there be any blasting on this site?
No.
Okay. So the excavation will be done with machinery, not blasting?
Correct. Conventional excavation.
All right. Very good. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Amber Maglio. I live off of Black Hill. I guess my question would be, have you guys done any analysis of what this is going to do to the bus routes for traffic?
Could you get a little closer to the mic so we can hear you?
Sure, and I can repeat. She was asking about how the traffic would interfere with the bus routes. So, applicant, when it comes to the expected hours of operation and what the expected routes will be, do you expect peak hours to be certain times of day?
So our bus routes are spaced out because of the schooling issue. So if buses run late, it impacts the next school. So not just that, but there's already kids that are on the buses for a while. Aside from that, it's going to be out of traffic. And my other concern is, what is this going to do to the property values? This isn't something that we bought houses by, that we wanted to be by. So the additional traffic on the roads, how are you guys going to counter that? Are you going to pay extra tax? Are you guys going to pay maintenance for that road? Those trucks weigh way more than my car does.
All right, so those things are outside the scope of this commission, so just let you know about that. But in regards to the hours of the traffic,
So
and the routes, we're going to answer your question. And the routes are going from this site to the site that is how many feet down the road?
I don't have the exact dimension, but it's just a short distance.
yeah, we know the road. The concern is that it's going to stop buses.
Sure. So when we're talking about hours of operation, the proposal is asking 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday,
Correct.
Saturdays 8 to noon, no Sunday operations,
Correct.
And no holiday operations as outlined in the,
Correct.
okay. So the expectation is truck traffic would start at 7 a.m.
The excavation is, the anticipation, I'm sorry, is that work would begin on site at 7 a.m. The chances of the first truck leaving the site at 7 a.m. are slim. They have to be loaded before they left. So I would expect that the first truck would probably,
Thank you.
I would expect that the first truck would probably leave within 30 minutes or so of that, depending on the time of year, maybe later in the winter time. We anticipate that traffic spread out throughout the day on a state highway, not to change the level of surface on the road. And again, they are all going to be going to the west. Obviously, the Saturdays have no impact on what you're discussing currently, but we do not anticipate any decline levels of service on the road as a result of this project.
And then I guess my next question would be, if this were to go through and be approved, wouldn't this set a precedent for places that were already wetland protected? There's
So,
wetlands all up and down that road,
Right.
my concern would be, is that going to open the door for others?
so wetlands purview is separate from our purview. So we do not make the wetlands determination on the Planning and Zoning Commission. The wetlands determination is made by the Wetlands Board. So there is a wetlands meeting next week because that public hearing got continued. So what happens for planning and zoning purposes, if wetlands approves the application, then wetlands has been approved and then it comes to us. And that's why we cannot make a decision on this application tonight because wetlands has yet to act. So we are waiting for wetlands to make their determination first. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, please.
Hi, my name is Julie Mahalski, and we own property on 8 and 10 Karen Drive. Our property, part of it is used as rental property. I am concerned with the property value and rental income, and concerned for the renters that I have here with the noise being 100 feet away. I also have concern with trees. We have pine trees, which are small rooted trees. We had a tree company come out and they strongly advised against, when you take trees down, you have to take them down in an entire group. These trees are about 80 feet. As trees are going to start being removed from Rawson, it's going to create the potential for wind and these trees to fall. They said you either have to take them all out or leave them all alone. So since I don't have control over what he's taking out, this poses the risk of the trees that are still standing there falling on our property. I also have concerns about, we have a pool and all the dust and debris that's going to fall in the pool, the pine trees, because whatever is there left, the pine needles already fill up the pool. It has to be vacuumed daily. It's going to ruin the filter. It's going to ruin the pool. I feel like it's a financial burden on my property. The other concern I have is with traffic. Whether the state approved, it is on a corner, so when trucks are leaving the property, they are slow. They can't shift, they can't upshift very quickly, so it's a slow exit on the property. As you know, people speed on that road, and I feel like it's going to be an accident waiting to happen.
Just to clarify, there is a 100-foot buffer between property lines and the project, correct?
That's correct.
Is it all wooded?
Yes. If I could address.
I'm not asking, I'm kidding. For the section A and B, how much of that is wooded?
All of it.
All of it is wooded.
Yes.
So they'll be logging first.
Correct. If I could kind of expand a little bit.
Please.
So this concern regarding the trees was also brought up at the Wetlands Commission. We currently have an arborist looking at the trees to see which ones appear to be threatening based on what the concerns that have been raised are. The applicant has already agreed that the trees that appear to pose a threat to adjacent properties, they're willing to take down as part of this operation. So those large trees of concern will be taken care of from a potentially hazard condition, and also if those large trees are there, they're not going to be shedding needles into your pool.
Quick question before you move on. Has the applicant and the arborist spoken with the impacted neighboring properties about what trees would be?
No, there's a group of obviously large pine trees in that general area, and those are the trees that are being looked at.
And are those within the 100-foot buffer zone?
Yes, they are.
So the,
If, where our application is to leave the 100-foot buffer zone as is, but based on concerns of some of the adjoining property owners, if there's potential to mitigate some of those concerns by removing the potentially threatening trees or the trees that feel threatening, we're willing to do that.
okay.
The other thing I just wanted to mention, the DOT sightline. You're correct in terms of the trucks accelerating at a slower rate. When DOT reviews sightlines or sightline demonstrations for projects of this magnitude, there's a different criteria for trucks than there is for passenger vehicles. So the truck, the speed of the acceleration of the truck and the turning moves of the truck are taken into consideration in the sightline evaluation. There's two different sets of standards. They're not judging it as though it's a passenger vehicle.
So the passenger vehicles that drive too fast on that road, there's accidents all the time. They're just the answers.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the audience? Just, if you want to just head to that side of the room so that when your microphone is free, you can step right up and just name and address for the record.
Hello, Mark Nato, 13 Shepherd Hill Road. So, what is your current traffic right now coming out of your facility?
If you could address any questions to me, and then I'll have the applicant answer anything. Yep.
Well, my concern is, right now, coming out of Rawson's project, the trucks don't always stop. And I got a great example. There is a big green conventional tractor trailer that has almost made me a hood ornament on multiple occasions. So what do we have for assurances that there will be safety with trucks coming in and out of that place actually stopping before entering the road instead of just pulling out, seeing they're going to be on corners?
So, just to clarify what's within our scope and what is not, right? So enforcement of speed and proper driving is not part of our scope of authority. However, you can talk to the police commission about road safety, and then Plainfield PD could set up appropriate monitoring of that particular strip of roadway. So unfortunately, that's outside our scope. But in regards to the amount of traffic, so this would be adding 100 trips, 50 in, 50 out.
Correct.
And those 50 in and 50 out are going from this property to the neighboring property and back. So there'll be a back and forth.
That's correct.
So are you saying that none of the trucks will be making a left turn out of this property?
I can't definitively say that over the period of this excavation, that no truck will ever turn left. I don't drive the trucks, I'm not there every day, and I can't definitively say that will never occur. What I can say is that the DOT is evaluating the turning movements both on Kinway, they're shown in the sightline drawings, and they have agreed that this project is acceptable and meets their requirements.
So this driveway had to be approved by state DOT first?
That's correct, and you have the approval of your project.
Sorry, Ben. Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Heather Brisson. I live on Palmer Court. I've also lived down Central Village on where Central Cycle Club is. So just further than this. We all know that Plainfield is considered the last green valley. It is a nationally recognized heritage corner because of its rural character, forest, and open space. The gravel pit would damage the very landscape that makes the region special. Gravel pits can lead to deforestation, habitat loss, and soil erosion, permanently altering the ecosystem. Plainfield is only 43 square miles, and we want another gravel pit. It doesn't quite make sense if we have this title. Why do we have this title if we don't try to preserve the nature? And a couple of questions for the man that just did the presentation. Are there any assessments for the wear and tear on the roads? How will we be monitoring the air quality? Do you want me to keep asking the questions?
If you want to go through your questions, or if you want to pause in between, either way.
I'd like 5 questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Wear and tear on the roads, do you have any assessments on that?
Go ahead, I'll let you spit them all out.
Okay. Air quality, how do you plan on monitoring it? assessments on wildlife or the water there, or the light pollution, how it's going to affect the wildlife? How are you actually going to restore the area back? And then lastly, how much do you plan on making off this project overall? And is it truly worth the destruction of the land to develop the community?
All right, so just once again to clarify the role of planning and zoning. When we make our assessments, we are looking at the regulations, we are not looking at money. So money is not a factor in the planning and zoning decision-making process. So when it comes to whether or not the town or the applicant will make money on the project, that's not something within our scope, so we can't evaluate that, okay? But as for the roads, so just with the DOT report, if you could talk about the road issue, and then also with air quality, if you can talk about dust mitigation, and then in regards to the depth of your digging, what impact would be on water and wildlife, and the restoration.
In terms of the wear and tear of the road, this is a state highway that's within the purview of the state of Connecticut. And again, they have already approved the access to the project. In terms of the air quality, we have specified on the plan set, which is consistent with most gravel sites and other sites in this community, that the dust is controlled by water and truck during times when the dust comes up. And during dry periods, when the site can get potentially dusty, they're required to have a water truck on site to water the travel areas so that the trucks aren't producing additional dust, and to water the operating areas so that it's not producing additional dust.
So you're just going to be spraying water and it's
That
going to
is
be
how it goes. No, this is a gravelly site, we have to keep the soils, the water's not going to create mud, this is gravelly surface, which is why the dust conditions potentially can be great. If we were dealing with a wet site that was muddy, we wouldn't have the dust conditions. So the dust control will be done by water truck, which again is consistent with other gravel banks, is consistent with the Connecticut DEP standards, and that's how dust is mitigated on the process. Years ago, they used to use chemical leads to do that. We obviously don't want to do that. Nobody does that. Bad idea was a bad idea. They were smarter than we were 30 years ago. In terms of the restoration of the site, we have specified, because we know this is going to be an agricultural property, we specified 12 inches of subsoil and an additional 6 inches of topsoil above that. That's more than most areas are treated to when the restoration processes begin. In terms of the depth of excavation, I had mentioned previously excavation area A has a maximum depth of 12 feet. Excavation area B has an area that's approximately 20 feet, the central portion, and then it drops down to about 10 feet on the north end of that. These areas, the topography currently is rolling topography. It will be turned into something that's usable as an outflow.
And in regards to water and wildlife,
The water, in accordance with the requirements of the regulations, we installed 6 groundwater monitoring wells to ensure that we were not intercepting groundwater in the area that we anticipate to be used for agricultural fields, and to know what the water level would be in the area that we're proposed to work on. And that's specified in the plans of the regulations. As far as impacts on wildlife, I just want to point out that I know this might sound bad, and I don't mean to minimize concerns, but we're talking about 11 acres on a 134-acre parcel of property. That 11 acres would fit inside the little distribution center for towns. We're not doing, this is not a massive excavation project. One of the things I failed to mention is the anticipated time of completion of this. Excavation area A is anticipated to take 6 months from start to completion, and excavation area B is anticipated to take up to 2 years. So we're not talking about 30 years worth of excavation here. This is a short duration project on a very small percentage of the overall project.
And like I know you mentioned a few times that 11 acres isn't that much, but Interroyal in itself is 16 acres. So I think in comparison, even people who actually live here, who has 10 acres?
What I'm saying is
well
that
then, we're not going to debate the opinion of whether somebody thinks 10 acres is significant or not. We've heard your opinion on it, and we've heard your opinion on it, but we're not going to engage in a debate about whether it's significant or not. That's for the public and then the board to decide. Thank you. Next comment.
Black Hill Road. One, I'd like to thank all of you for being here and volunteering. And two, I really want to thank everybody here for coming out and being here today. So I do have a few questions. Not sure if they can be answered. I know you, I'm sorry, what is your name?
John.
What is it?
John.
John, hi, thank you again for coming. So I know you briefly discussed wildlife. I wanted to make sure, because in this area, specifically the fish hatchery, which borders the river, we have known bald eagles in this area, which is approximately about a half mile distance. So I was wondering if U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services and the Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection, which is Connecticut DEP, the Wildlife Division, if they have been consulted or if any permits were given to do any of this, knowing that the bald eagles do live in this area. And we do know that only for the fact that it is on site, and they themselves have photographs, which I can hand in to you guys.
Please. So what is the protocol for identification of, I'm assuming bald eagles are a protected species, so if in going on the site you found bald eagle nesting or et cetera, is there a protocol with DEP for that?
To be honest with you, I don't know if there's a reporting protocol. We're not environmental specialists that do inventories. I will tell you that based on the magnitude of the project, that it does not require additional permits from the Connecticut DEP or the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Association or organization. This project is a local jurisdiction project only. It does not require additional permits from those entities. You mentioned the river. Our project is a significant distance from the river. The planning and zoning commission requirement is 100 foot off the property lines. We are well more than double that from the river. And most of the project, I'm just going to use sheet 5 here for a second. The only area adjacent to the river would be this northeasterly portion of the project. This cyan line or teal type line is the limits of the delineated wetlands. So the area between that teal line and the river is left and is wooded on natural state, as well as the area directly adjacent to the river. So the river corridor that extends to the north into the larger areas of the property that are currently agricultural fields, we're not going anywhere near any of this. It's just a small area in this location.
Ryan, for next month, would we be able to get a clear ruling of if there are any specific rules or protections for bald eagles if nesting was found on this property? And if there was a required buffer if nesting was found?
See what I can find.
Yeah, if you could please have that information available for our next meeting since we know this will be continued. Thank you.
I also have copies that I can give you for Connecticut DEP rules on that, just so that you guys know.
Sure.
Yep.
And if you want to hand that to me and I'll...
I'm going to give you
Okay,
everything.
perfect.
Yep, I don't need to keep anything.
All right.
Next, if this does go through and there will be an opening in that area, I was wondering for everyone that passes by, or if anyone is familiar of the area, a few weeks ago, guests were welcome to take a walk through so that we could go through this area to see what was going to happen. During that time, you were able to see what I would call is a dumping land. So I have multiple photographs of that. So we're not just talking multiple, buildings, vehicles, hundreds and hundreds of tires that are in that area. So I'm concerned about the digging. One, will this area be cleaned? surrounding areas? Can it affect any wells? Can it affect, even if we're going to be building a pond? We do know in the past that the person that had lived there did have multiple things that were buried in the property. So I think there's a large area of consideration, even though we do know that the lands have been tested in certain areas.
So if you could detail when you did the site walk, because this commission did not do the site walk. So on the site walk, are you familiar with the area she's referencing? If so, is that going to be part of the area of disturbance? And then in the event, in the excavation, you came across a buried, we'll just use an example of an oil tank, what the DEEP protocol is if you should uncover something that could be considered an environmental issue.
Actually, I've got my notes, I can verify the sidewalk. The sidewalk was held with the Inland Wetlands Commission on the 15th of March, which is Saturday morning. I'm going to flip to sheet number 6. Some of the area that is being referred to is actually directly in the area where the driveway is going to be constructed. So there are a couple of campers, I believe, and vehicles in that general vicinity. Those will be removed during the installation of the driveway, so that will all be taken care of in that area. The sidewalk actually went down the existing cart path through the wetland areas out to the back where the excavation area was. There is some material that's located directly adjacent to the wetland in this area, and then the grapevine in my sheet here. And then I believe the tires were primarily located in the back part of the property out in this area. We are not going to be going into those areas outside the excavation area. So in terms of anything that's out there, it's going to remain as it sits currently, with the exception of the work that we need to do in this area. I can tell you that we've dug a series of 31 test holes throughout the property, did not encounter anything in terms of buried materials. If a buried material was found in one of the tanks, whatever it might happen to be, then the requirement is that does get reported to DEP, and then at that point we have to have someone come out and do a cleanup. They test the soil, monitor the soil around it, and then depending on what level of contamination there may or may not be, the DEP and the fire marshal actually would have say in how that gets removed and how it gets disposed of. So we didn't encounter it in the 31 holes we did. If we were to encounter it, then yes, it would be reported.
So only the dumping bulky waste that is in the area slated for driveway and excavation is distinction and our visual aspect of going east and northbound. It is a very sharp corner, located right next to our Central Village Fire Station. We personally have had 2 very bad accidents at 5759 that have been reported, but there have been multiple accidents at that location that have not been reported. That an accident has happened and the people have left. But us ourselves have reported 2 severe accidents. And I just have photographs just so that a person can visualize what this area actually looks like versus what a draft might detail. And that is all I have. Thank you. Okay, thank you. And staff, if you could have her information put copies for members' packets for next month so that they can review that information before the next meeting.
If I could just address the traffic homeowner.
Sure.
Based on those recent comments. So rather than simply referring to the DOT's requirement, I just wanted to flip to the 2 sheets, sheets 11 and 12 that detail what the sight lines are. So the sight line looking westerly from the proposed driveway is 910 feet. And the sight line looking easterly from the proposed driveway is also 910 feet in order to meet the DOT requirements. So rather than just referring to it, I wanted to show the actual plan graphic that demonstrates those sightlines. And that takes into account both the horizontal and vertical geometry of the road.
Roland Bragg, 282 Black Hill Road. A couple of things. You're saying it's 900 feet from the center of that curve?
So the DOT sightline.
Right, the sightline from the Department of Transportation is met where you're actually sitting in the vehicle to stop ready to make the turn onto the other side of the road. So it's measured from back from the curb line at a height equivalent to what the truck would be looking at and how far down the road the truck can see on the ground.
And how far are you going to clean back on the side of the road to make that
15 feet.
visible? 15 feet?
No, I'm sorry, not clear. That's where it's measured from.
Yeah.
So the sightline triangle starts here and it goes out across down the roadway in both directions. So we're not necessarily clearing.
This is trees and land there.
Right.
So how they going to see?
We're on the outside of the curve, which allows us greater visibility. And again, this takes into both horizontal and vertical geometry of the road and the
One
shoulder.
moment. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a conversation you want to have, if you could have it outside so that we can make sure that we can hear the speakers and that our recordings can pick up the speakers and not your conversations. That would just be really appreciated. Thank you, sorry.
So these drawings demonstrate the visual line of the site of the driver of the truck. So this dark line represents the visual line that the operator would be looking at. The dashed line underneath it indicates this is an exaggerated scale of this profile. It indicates the topography of the ground that he's looking across. So this line that he's looking across, the topography is here, and we're looking over the ground level.
Somewhat on this subject, but, and I'm not going to throw a person under the bus even though I'd like to. So a town official made a comment that we will no longer follow the aquifer maps because they're not accurate. And Rawson is sitting on top of 20 years ago when I was on wetlands, inland wetlands in Rawson, in their original permit. Our concern at the time was when you got done taking the gravel out, they were going to turn it into a landfill, sitting on top of the town aquifer. Now we have a town official saying that, well, that's not an aquifer because the maps aren't right. So why the hell are we approving things if we don't have the right wetland maps or aquifer maps? Another one that we turned down was down where the train substation is. That was supposed to have no truck storage. Now there's nothing but truck storage. So I think the town needs to update their maps as far as water goes, because any excavation is going to affect the water level in that area. And this is a town aquifer. In case anybody didn't realize, the New Green Deal is concerned about water, so why aren't we? Secondly, is that the traffic on that road, I'm hoping that what I'm hearing from you stays correct, because I will watch it, is that you're going from this site back to the other site, and you're not taking a left-hand turn going back to your other.
So, clarity, previously I asked that question of him, he said
Oh, I
majority.
heard it, I
Yeah.
heard it.
So he can't guarantee, and we can't actually
Because
dictate the
between them
direction.
and Barnes on Black Hill, you better make sure you're watching where the hell you're going, because you're gonna get run over by a truck. The other thing was, the lady already brought up about the garbage that's dumped on that property. I know he's only gonna be responsible where he's digging. The town needs to get their enforcement officers on the ball and get those properties cleaned up. We have more sites in this town that have burned out, have garbage dumped all over them. Take a ride up East Shepherd Hill Road. You got a house that burned down, it's got 4 junk cars sitting there. And the only time I see enforcement officers is when some poor landowner is trying to put up a shed. So I think it needs to be corrected.
Question for staff. So recently flood zone maps were updated with the state of Connecticut, is that right?
23 they were there.
Okay, so what is the process with the state to update the aquifer protection zones?
So we have 3 aquifer protection districts in town. One is the northern section, one is back behind us, for the Gallup fields, and there's one in this other section that belongs to Jewett City Water. Those are the only 3 aquifer protection districts that we have never had. Never seen any that to the contrary.
So who maintains, monitors, updates the aquifer protection zone mapping?
DEP.
DEP updates
Connecticut
that.
Water.
Okay, so on file with the town, do we have copies of that, or is that just stored with the state?
It is actually on our GIS system. If you turn on the aquifer protection layer, you can see the areas.
Okay, and then when it comes to bulky waste, so since there was a site walk on this property previously, was it noted if there were any bulky waste violations? Because we do have a bulky waste ordinance, am I correct?
There are, so it's not an ordinance, it's actually in our zoning regulations. And the area does constitute what we can consider to be a junkyard. And we do have the authority to condition approval of cleaning all that up before the project proceeds.
Okay, so was that process initiated after the site walk was done?
We'll be addressing that next month.
Okay, all right.
So I had a question about the waste, and thank you to the previous things. I just had to pay $6 grand to get my, whole property aquifer checked and wetlands checked, and I had to pay that for a surveyor to be told that I could, get my 3-inch conduit through my driveway. So I'm a little concerned that if there is bulky waste in the wetlands, and you're saying you have to actually excavate it and move it, then how is there like a double standard for just the homeowner that pays out of her pocket and our working salary and not a company, right? To move and disrupt the microorganisms of the wetlands. So I think that really needs to be reconsidered, because if it's the town that gets to make these decisions, then maybe all of the regulations should be really looked at and updated to actual 2025 standards, because all of our land's just going to be wiped out and homeowners are going to get screwed. And all of the, our houses that we build and maintain and already have paid off, our taxes are going up in this town, and there's nothing to safeguard anyone's land. And depreciation is just going to happen. So there can't be double standards.
So I'll just address your regulation question. When it comes to wetlands, we have no authority over wetlands regulations, so I would recommend, visiting the wetlands next week and letting them know you're concerned about their regulations. In regards to planning and zoning regulations, if you've been following our agendas, you will see that we recently did a regulation update to the gravel operations to change hours of operation, buffer zones, because of the feedback we've gotten on previous projects. Also, in the industrial zone regulations, we updated those regulations so that any project greater than 10,000 square feet is subject to special permit process, which includes public hearing, public notification, and public comment. So I completely hear and agree that regulations need to be reviewed, and this board has been reviewing their regulations and updating. It is a slow process because every text amendment change we make is subject to your review. There are public hearings on these regulations, so if you were not here when we had the publicly noticed gravel operation regulation, we had 3 people speak at that public hearing. When we revised, hold on, let me finish. I just want to make sure the public is aware. It's not normal for us to have a group of this level here, and I want you to understand the work we do as unpaid volunteers. And I'm a little passionate about it because I got involved 20 years ago because I, like you, saw a project that I didn't agree with, and I didn't feel the board was doing what they needed to do to protect the property owners. So I have served on this board for you for 20 years, and we are working diligently to make sure that your concerns are addressed and that it's within regulation. But for us to change regulation, it takes time, and it takes you. So when only 3 people show up to our public hearings, when we have text amendment changes, we do the best we can with the information we have. So I absolutely love that you are all here today, and I appreciate you, and I hope you keep looking at our agendas, and every time there's a public hearing, I hope you're here, because as applicants can attest, there's maybe 2 or 3 people who show up. When we did that regulation change for industrial, there were 3 people who showed up for that one. And that was a big one in my opinion, because we recently had a project that was over 1.2 million square feet, and we could not hold a public hearing on that because of our regulations. So we changed our regulation. Moving forward, any industrial project greater than 10,000 square feet will be subject to special permit, which means public hearing, please show up, public notification and public comment. So that's my little moment of privilege as the chair, so thank you very much.
And I want to say thank you, and thank you for all of your volunteer time. I really appreciate you sharing that with everyone because, you know, I only heard about this meeting about a half an hour to an hour before I got here because I didn't see it posted anywhere. And I think that maybe we need to do a better job of getting it out there in the public.
A year ago at a budget hearing, I'm Carly Gardens. You might have seen me because I post every Sunday the agendas, the meeting minutes, the videos. Every Sunday I post it. I put it in the Plainfield CT residence page. It's a public post. Please share it. So a year ago at the budget hearing, I asked the town to please place agendas, meeting notices, etc. on the town's Facebook page. It has not yet happened. So every Sunday, I drink my coffee and I put it on there. And this is a moment of privilege of the chair. So I'm trying. And I agree with you. I think it should be on Facebook. So if you are on Facebook and you see that post on my page, please share it. Like it, share it. The more you know, the better we all are. So thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, I'm here for my dad. My dad lives at 24 Karen, so his property is one of the abutting properties of the phase 1, 5 acres. Growing up, I walked those woods. We wandered those woods quite often. There is a lot of vehicles. I know that you guys did the walkthrough. I wasn't part of it because I don't live at that residence anymore. I live in Brooklyn. My dad was in the hospital the other day, so I have to be here for him. But some of his concerns was there is a lot of vehicles. There was probably over 100 vehicles at one point in time that were stored in the back of there. A few years ago, they came through and did a lot of logging on that property. So I don't know if any of those vehicles were cleaned up when they came through and did logging, or if any of that's going to be addressed with the vehicles sitting as long as they have. I'm sure there was a lot of gas leaking into the ground, automotive fluids in the ground. If any of that has to be cleaned out, or if you guys are going to be processing that as soil you're going to sell.
Just one moment, I want to just ask staff. So Ryan, in regards to the review of the bulky waste regulation, that would include any vehicles that were stored on the property, correct?
Yes, the junkyard mostly applies to vehicles. Some vehicles, several campers or mobile homes, I should say, and also campers that are on the property.
Okay, so in regards to the town's review of that, any violations would go to the property owner. Okay, but then in regards to the applicant, they will take care of anything that's in the area of disturbance, which is the 11 acres. So it'll really be a 2-part process. Part of bulky waste that will be addressed by the private property owner, and then part of the bulky waste that will be addressed by the applicant, just to be clear.
Right. That'll be between the 2 parties.
Okay.
And then I know it's DOT, but there's a passing lane right on that corner, right after the corner. So I didn't know if that was going to be addressed and re-established, knowing that the driveway is going to be closer to that passing lane. I know that it's DOT,
But I do think, staff, could we check when it comes to police commission jurisdiction if they can request review of passing zones based on safety concerns?
I can check on that.
Yeah, if you could check that for next meeting. This meeting will be continued, so any unanswered questions, we'll have that information for next meeting.
And then the trees that you may be taking out that's within that 100 feet, will you be replacing the trees with new growth? I know that the loggers have come through. They did do some replacement of some of the trees when they did come through. I didn't know if that was something that you guys were going to be doing in addition to help. So they originally, behind 24 Karen Drive, they originally enjoyed that whole backside was all trees. The trees were a big part of it. They built the houses on the left-hand side of that road now. That was all trees as well. There's 3 houses that have gone up in the past 20 years. So he was just worried about his view and how that's going to be restored, knowing that there's going to be a pond built back there, and then the 6 acres of agriculture.
Do you want to address the vegetative buffer and in the event, how much would be taken or replaced depending on the review?
Sure. The vegetative buffers are something that's required in the zoning regulations, and we have honored that in the most recent change to 100 feet. That's what we have proposed. The concerns that were raised about the larger trees, we are reviewing and addressing those. Typically in a pine forest, those larger trees, they are seedlings, and generally there are a lot of small immature trees in the pine ground in those areas. Once those larger trees are removed, the canopy or opened up, those smaller trees will fill in short order. But again, we're only going into that area to address the concerns that have been raised simply because it is required to leave it as a buffer.
So ordinarily, the 100-foot buffer would not be touched,
Right,
but because of
touched.
concerns brought up at the wetlands public hearing,
Correct.
it's being reviewed, and any trees of concern would be removed.
But something that's determined threatening by the arborist will be addressed.
And then water levels, I know that you said that you guys will be monitoring through the 6 wells that you have, that you dug. How often is that monitoring? My dad is very concerned about his well. He had to redig his well in the past 10 years because it collapsed, or I don't remember what the reason was, but something happened with his well and he had to redig it. So he was concerned with the water levels, especially with the current pond that's at the end of Karen Drive, and then the current swamplands that are on both sides of that pond.
So, as it relates to the pond, a portion of the pond is within the jurisdiction of the Wetlands Commission, and the remainder is not. The purpose of the monitoring wells that we've installed are to determine what the groundwater levels are for 2 reasons. One, we are proposing a pond, so we need to know what the finished water elevation is going to be based on the monitoring of the groundwater level. And that's how we determine that the max depth of water in the pond would be approximately 7 feet. We are getting into the water table on the northeasterly side of that pond area to a greater depth than on the southeasterly side of the pond area. The water will seek its own level and we'll end up at 7, with approximately 7 feet of water. The other purpose for groundwater monitoring is to ensure areas that we want to make sure that we're staying out of the groundwater, that no excavation close to it. So in excavation area B, where we intend to turn that back as cultural fields, in addition to the soil mitigation that we described in terms of the color after excavation, we've also limited our excavation to a depth of not less than 5 feet above the water table, so we're not impacting that, and we reserve that area in the event that a septic system were ever to be installed, or somebody would want to build in that area, so we preserve that area for those purposes.
There is a lot of fields in the back of that. Just a general statement. Wandering through that, I understand why they want to do the gravel. There's a rather large hill that's back there that is, it's never grown vegetation because it's very solid sand, gravel. I understand why they want to get back there and excavate and take it all out. But there is a lot of wetlands that's back there. There's several swamps, there's several streams.
So the wetlands impact will be next week's meeting with the wetlands
That was
commission.
just general statement. I understand why they're trying to do it, but sure.
Just as a matter of clarification.
Sure.
The area that we're talking about to the back where the fields are, we're actually not taking that whole hill out. Right. There's a large area that extends to the west from the edge of the excavation area B. We're not actually taking that out. There's a wetland to the north, and there's a wetland that wraps around to the south. That's staying in place. We're creating a 3-to-1 slope from about the midpoint of that hill back down towards excavation area B. The agricultural fields that we're discussing are this whole big back area back here. So we are not actually taking this whole hill down, and we will be maintaining a significant berm between the excavated.
It's short.
address 1857 Black Hill Road, 59 Black Hill Road. The question I have is about the road getting into the property. So when you're coming into the road, you're 100 feet, more than where the road is now. To 200 feet. Okay, so you're pulling in basically across the street from the house. So when you pull in, how's the road being constructed? Is it going to be vegetated, trees and stuff in front of the road? Or is that getting all knocked down? So when the trucks come in, I'm just going to see trucks in the front of my yard. It's like, what's going to be there?
Can you describe the width, the signage, the layout of the driveway? And just to let me know what page you're on.
I am on sheet number 6. So at the area where the road meets the street, at the end of the paved apron that's shown on sheet 6 is the gray shaded area. There's a dimension there of 32 feet. That's the width of the driveway at that location. As you turn into the site, it narrows down to 24 feet and then eventually 20 feet as it turns into the main part of the site. The driveway is actually directly across from SNET pole 109, which is actually off to the side of your yard. Your house is actually further to the east, so it's not directly across the house. The house is further to the east. But the area for the driveway will be cleared. There'll be a vegetated buffer that remains directly across from the house because the road is going to be dropping down in grade and it's behind the tree line that exists in this current area.
So the tree line's going to stay, that's not contained. So
The
you're
area of the
going
tree
deeper
lines-
into the road.
Right, the tree line that will be removed will be at the mouth of the driveway, and then as the driveway turns in, there will be vegetation that remains on the east side of that driveway between the driveway and the road.
All right, and then I know DOT said that the road's good there. There'll be an accident. There will be.
Any other comments or questions on this application? Okay. With the understanding that we do have to wait for wetlands, I recommend continuing this public hearing, so I'll entertain a motion to continue.
So moved to the May 13th.
Second?
I have a motion by Bart to continue to May 13th. I have a second by June. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, public hearing's continued. Hope to see you all next month. All right, moving on to item C, 25-6SP of DeWitt Barlow. The applicant indicated we're still waiting on, actually staff indicated we're still waiting on information. So it was recommended that we not open the public hearing, but rather just continue to next month.
Move to continue to the May 13th meeting for this applicant.
Okay, motion by Bart, second by June. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we are continuing that item without opening. Moving on to the regular meeting, call the meeting to order. We do have some additions and corrections to the agenda this evening. Recommending adding items D, E, and F to the agenda. Do I have a motion to add those under new business?
So moved.
Second?
A motion by Bart and a second by June to add items D, E, and F under new business. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Item 3 is citizen participation. This is opportunity for members of the public to address the board on an item that is not a public hearing item or an agenda item, as we're not allowed to entertain comments on agenda items that are not public hearing. So is there any other comments from the board this evening? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Moving on to the unfinished old business. Item A, 25-2SP has been continued, so I'll entertain a motion to continue that.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by June to continue.
Second.
Second by Bart. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Application is continued. Moving on to item B, 25-4SP of Kevin Flood. Bussin O'Neill applying for special permit to upgrade the sewage treatment plant located at 26 Black Hill Road to add 2 clarifying tanks and associated equipment. Assessors map 14, block 78, lot 14, RA 19 zoning district. Staff had recommended 2 items for conditions. Item 1, Mylars are to be recorded and a zoning permit obtained prior to proceeding. Town engineer also had activities shall be conducted in a manner that does not cause or contribute to violations of state water quality standards. Erosion and sediment control, best practice, management practices shall be installed immediately prior to and be maintained during and after construction as needed. To to prevent adverse impacts to water resources and adjacent lands. Such practices shall be in accordance with the Connecticut guidelines for soil erosion and sediment control. So items for discussion, and if making a motion, please include those conditions as read.
Have we received the revised plans for the staff notes?
They were uploaded, yes.
All right, but we haven't had a chance to review them?
No, so he did present those plans.
No, okay, so the revised ones were the ones he presented last month? Okay, thank you for that.
And the only outstanding item was the wetlands approval on this application, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any other items for discussion?
Move to approve with stipulations as read by the chair.
Okay, motion by Bart to approve with those conditions as read. I have a second by Dan. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Application is approved with conditions. Item C, 25-1 SPL of Roma Construction. Do we have for the applicant this evening, or are they requesting a continuance on this?
I don't believe they are ready to go, so they have requested to continue.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to continue the application.
Point of order, Madam Chair, do we have enough time left on this application?
Do we have 35 more days, Ryan?
Yes, so I assume they will be giving us an extension next month to June. But we do have enough time to get to
May 13th will be our 65 days?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Bart and Ryan. All right, so given that we do have times in the timeline, I'll entertain a motion to continue.
So moved.
I have a motion to continue by Bart,
Second.
second by June. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Application is continued. Item D was the public hearing that we did not open, so I'll entertain a motion to continue that.
So moved.
A motion by John to continue.
Second.
A second by Bart. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, application is continued. Moving on to new business. Item A, 25-2TA of Brian Rosser, requesting a text amendment to section 13.5 of the regulations to add section 13.56.6 to allow for billboards along I-395. Since this is a text amendment, this does require a public hearing, so I'll entertain a motion to schedule a public hearing.
I'll make that motion. Schedule.
Motion to schedule to May 13th. Second by John. All in favor? Aye. Public hearing, May 13th. Item B, 25-SP of John Brisson IV, requesting a special permit for a two-bedroom accessory dwelling unit in a commercial building located at 590-596 North Main Street, Assessors Map 4M, Block 111B, Lot 4, C2 zoning district. As this is a special permit, it does require a public hearing.
Move to schedule public hearing at May 13th planning and zoning meeting.
Second.
I have a motion by Bart to schedule for May 13th and a second by June. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Scheduled for public hearing in May. Item C, 25-1ZC of Stephen St. Germain, requesting a zone change of 34.16 acres on Cemetery Road from RA 60 to RA 30, Assessors Map 8, Block 48, Lots 11 and 13, owned by Langevin Realty. As this is a zone change, it requires a public hearing.
Move to schedule public hearing May 13th.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Bart and a second by June to schedule to May 13th. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, scheduled to public hearing. Item D, 25-5 SPL of Ron Lyman, requesting modification to a previously approved site plan on properties located at 226, 230, 238 Norwich Road, Assessors Map 15, Block 56, Lot 7, 7A and 7B, C1 zoning district. Do we have the applicant this evening?
No, we are waiting for updated plans.
Okay, so given we're waiting for updated plans, I'll entertain a motion to continue this application.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by June to continue.
Second.
Second by Bart. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Application is continued. Item E, 25-8 SP of Olga Photos, requesting a special permit for an accessory dwelling unit in a commercial building on property located at 628 Norwich Road, Assessors Map 2P, Block 36, Lot 28, C2 zoning district. And given this is also a special permit, it does require a public hearing. When was this application received, Ryan?
Thursday, I believe.
Okay. Just given that our public hearing schedule is filling quick for May 13th, and since the application wasn't met in time for the public notice, I would think we'd be within our right to schedule it for April instead of May. I mean, not April, June.
Well, yeah, you have 65 days scheduled a hearing, so it's up to you.
Okay, so it's up to the board, but I wanted to just let you know that we are not required to schedule every single public hearing for the next meeting, because we have that 65-day timeline. We do have the ability to put an application to the June meeting. So I leave it up to the board. If you want to pull an all-nighter, I'm here with you, and we can do it for May, but if you want to do June, June is an option.
I'll make a motion for June meeting.
June 10th is the meeting? Okay. All right, I have a motion by June to schedule 25-8 SP to the June 10th meeting. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, we'll schedule that for June 10th. And then lastly, 25-9 SP of Linden Landscape Architects requesting a special permit for construction of a new fire headquarters on property located at 12 Railroad Ave, Plainfield, Assessors Map 1P, Block 39, Lot 25, RA30 zoning district. Given the application was received after the other applications and given the May load, I would
Given the
probably-
size of this one, I would
Yes.
anticipate we're going to have a larger than house, so I would move to schedule for our June meeting on the 10th.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Bart for the June 10th meeting for the public hearing. I have a second by June. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, June 10th it is. All right, the minutes were not included in the packet, so I'll entertain a motion to continue reviewing the minutes to next month.
I'll make that,
I have a motion by John to continue the
I'll
minutes.
second.
Second by June. All in favor? Aye. All right. Any correspondence?
No correspondence.
No correspondence. Report from zoning enforcement. Nothing new from the report. Report from planning.
I had the opportunity to attend a seminar on housing last week. It was trying to address Connecticut's housing needs. We're currently 80 to 90,000 housing units short right now. So there's discussion on how towns are dealing with that, reducing lot sizes, and allowing for more multifamilies, things of that nature. So it's going to be a series of events every couple of weeks.
Okay. And that goes in line with the changes we made to the accessory dwelling unit regulations, correct?
In part, yeah.
Okay. And then recently the regulations for multifamily in the commercial, industrial, and the RA 19 and 30 zones?
Commercial, 19 and 30.
Correct, not RA 16.
Not area 60, and I don't believe it's in the industrial review.
Okay. All right. Anything else from planning?
Nope, it should do it.
Okay. Report from engineering.
The only thing that I have is, so every year the state requires, it's called MS4, it's all the stormwater permitting. They require an annual report to be made to the state. So that report is available for viewing right now on the town website. It'll be available for 45 days. After that 45-day review period is over, then we will submit it to the state. So that's available right now.
Okay. And where on the website can that be located?
Right now it's on the homepage, right in the news section. It's also available planning and zoning, and then our MS4 section, where we have all of our MS4 related documents.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to other discussion regarding advisory letter to the siting council. So as I mentioned earlier today, we as the zoning board do not have any formal decision jurisdiction in regards to the waste incinerator plant that is being proposed on Black Hill. However, when I attended the Connecticut Bar Association training a couple weeks ago, I did ask the question as to what our role would be. And they did indicate that planning and zoning does have the ability to submit an advisory letter to the siting council. And included in that advisory letter would be history of the property. So since this board denied a zone change from residential to industrial on the property, we could include that information to the siting council. We could also look at our regulations, our plan of conservation and development, our mapping to show what we have planned for that area as we move forward as a town. So tonight, I just wanted to get input from the board if you want to move forward in drafting that letter, and if so, if you want to designate me as the liaison to work with staff on that letter, or if you want to schedule a special workshop meeting to work on that letter. So it's up to the board. From what I've read from the siting council, it does not appear that the applicant has put forward their application to the siting council yet. I am monitoring the siting council website. Once that application is submitted, it triggers a timeline. So we have a very short timeline if we want to submit this advisory letter. So I leave it up to the board how you want to proceed. Any items of discussion? So we could.
I would like to proceed with a little more haste, actually. I prefer that Carla draft something with staff, and if the executive board needs to meet to review the letter on a short notice, I prefer to do that.
Can I write to you the suggestions or the letter?
So we would go through staff.
Okay, right.
So, yeah, so if we're not having a meeting, then we wouldn't want to have any kind of explicit communication. But what we can do is, if in your reading of regulation, in your reading of the history of the property, in your reading of the plan of conservation and development, you have a point that you want included in the letter to the siting council, you can submit that to staff. And then if you deem that I work with staff to compile the letter, I would assume we would want to also consult with the town attorney, because it is a legal process. So I assume that our letter should have the legalese, and although I read a lot, I am not an attorney. So I think we need to consult the pros where the pros are needed. So I would work with staff and hopefully town attorney, the land use attorney, on what should be contained in the planning and zoning advisory letter.
I think my general opinion is we need to come out strong and at least take a position. It was very clear when this board voted unanimously to deny the permit in 2023. That position has not changed, and I think the presence here tonight signifies that our decision at the time was correct. So I would prefer that we err on the side of caution, come out strong, submit our letter, and make our case. Because I understand the siting council can make a determination without our input. I don't want to be at the table without input. So my attitude would be I would move that Carla liaise directly with staff, have the letter prepared in a relatively short timetable so we meet up when the filing is made to the siting council. To me, the fact that there is a public information board up indicates they intend to move forward to the siting council, and that's why they're trying to get public information to generate positivity on the event.
And just a clarification of timelines, Ryan. So in my reading of the siting council process, it appears that the May 7th meeting is like a preliminary that happens prior to their submission to the siting council. Is that correct?
I believe so. It is basically a public information meeting.
Okay. So I would want on next month's agenda to continue discussion of the advisory letter. So, was that a motion, Bart?
It was absolutely.
Okay, so I have a motion by Bart to nominate me as the liaison for the letter. Do I have a second on that motion? I have a second by June. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing none. Thank you for the vote of confidence, and I will proceed with that. So given the timelines and that preliminary, I would expect that I will have a draft letter for your review at our next meeting. And I will work with staff on that.
I thought that similar and this falls right in line with one of my previous comments. They really hit it home with the lawyer that having that substantiated evidence, right, that objective evidence, right, because we can stand behind those facts, right, and so this is that opportunity, right, how did you make that decision? How did you take the public's input where applicable? Where you heard a little bit of blurriness here, doesn't apply to us, wetland, that's us educating the public. Excellent. So I think this is really good. So we can come in strong to your point, Mark. A, B, C, D. This is why, this is the history, this is DOCD, whatever historical information, whatever evidence you have to base a decision on. Very important, because that takes the emotional side, the personal side out of it. Very hard to do, right? The subconscious of all of us exists. So this, I'm making my point, the ability here to make the link to this effort's importance, right? Doesn't stop here. We have to apply that in any decision we make. Okay, so remember this moment, this day, and I want us to really hear that. When I bring it up again, it's this exact thought. And the lawyers really hit that home in that training, right?
Yeah.
Because when it gets hot and heavy in other towns within the state, right, if you don't have anything to stand behind, you're done. You know? So I think it's really a good opportunity for us to go through this
Yep.
and hopefully get a lot of dialogue and feedback
And
from
just
the board. and other
on that note, Wetlands has the ability to submit their own advisory letter, so if they haven't discussed this, it might be something that they want to discuss at their meeting next week, that they also have the ability regarding an advisory letter, and it is my understanding there are significant wetlands on that property, so it might be in the best interest of the town that Wetlands consider their own separate advisory letter.
Until we see an actual plan, we don't know if it would be within the upland review area or not.
Understood. So we will know that by the May 7th info session, correct?
I would assume so. I don't know what they're going to present. I assume
Sure.
they're going to have plans.
Okay.
Can anyone let the commission, based on the plan that was previously presented, present their case? I can't imagine the actual design and layout has changed that radically since they came here.
I don't believe they ever submitted a plan.
Isn't that what
No, it was a zone change.
That was a zone
Yeah,
change.
it was a zone change. And since it got denied
All
by
right,
this board,
then it was
it didn't
never
go
on.
any
All
further.
right.
They just
Right.
let
Good
the-
correction.
let you know.
Yeah,
Thank you.
exactly.
All right.
All right, so seeing no other business before the board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, motion by June to adjourn, second by John, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, meeting is adjourned.